Well, good evening, folks. My name is Mike Dyer, and I'm the Maritime Curator here at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. I want to welcome you to the July Local History Guild. Thank you all for coming out tonight and tuning in. We have I think it's a really interesting topic tonight, and it's about this. It's about the History Press, Arcadia Publishing. You've got everybody. I'm sure you've seen these books. You know, they're everywhere out there in the community, in all 50 states. And we have the We have the acquisitions editor from the press, Mike Kinsella, is here, and we have Peggi Medeiros, who's an author for the press. And I suspect we'll have Bob Demanche. He's probably going to be tuning in here soon, but he hasn't tuned in yet. Bob is another author for the press. So, you know, one of the things that I was really interested in, I want to start off with Mike is what's the impetus behind this? I mean, you know, this is a highly successful endeavor that you're engaged in, and it covers historical topics of everything from, oh, there's Bob. Hi, Bob. It covers historical topics of everything from, you know, women's history in North Carolina to Alaska and railroads and the Civil War. And I mean, what's the driving wheel here, if you had to guess?
Well, thanks, and thanks for hosting the program today. It's a lot of fun. Well, I'm originally from New England, and so what drives me is New England history. I love it. That's where I grew up. That's what I call home. I've been an editor with the company for several years now, and I cover New England, which is a lot of fun for me. We do nonfiction history. We actually have two imprints: Arcadia Publishing, which is the book you displayed, the sepia-tone covered books that are mostly photographs and some text, and then the History Press, which is the side of the fence that I sit on, which is more text and fewer photographs. So, for example, we did our book with Peggi last year, Harriet Jacobs in New Bedford. So I cover New England for the press, and the company as a whole does about 500 books a year, which makes us the largest local and regional publisher in the U.S. of history.
Wow.
I do about probably 30 to 35 titles alone in New England every year. Wow. So I cover everything from, you know, sports figures to skiing to, you know, Harriet Jacobs, and we just had a shipwrecks in Cape Cod that just launched. It's doing very well. So anything you can think of on the history side of things, we do. And what drives the press and drives me is the tagline that when I joined the company, it's local history written by local authors. So people like Peggi and Bob, we rely on them to be the subject matter experts, and then we bring them in-house to write a book for us if we feel it's appropriate for our audience, and it's worked out very well.
You know, it was completely hilarious. This morning we were there was a piece in the Boston Globe about the Topsfield Fair, and you know, my wife and I were chatting. I'm from York, Pennsylvania, you know, and it's a Topsfield Fair, oldest fair in the country. I was like, no, the York Interstate Fair in York, Pennsylvania is the oldest fair in the country. And so we're talking a bit about this, and then I was like, well, let's just Google it. So I typed in Topsfield Fair, oldest fair in the country, and what pops up? An Arcadia Press book. You know, that was like the first thing. First thing that popped up. It was pretty great. You know, photos. I mean, why? That's really interesting. You know, that's a really interesting format. You know, to have, you know, books that are just full of images. That's almost an American heritage kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's part of what we do in both presses. Although, as I said, on the Arcadia side with the Images of America, it's a little bit more picture centric. So there's more images in there. There's about 200 probably. Whereas in a History Press title, we do anywhere from 60 to maybe 70 photos. But they are important to the telling of the history. And it's also important, I can say as a publisher, I'm an old print guy from way back. So as a medium, I enjoy print. I'm on a computer all day long. So I get teased a bit at home because you say, what do you do all day? And I say, I edit manuscripts. And they say, what do you do at night? I said, I read books. So yeah. So I think I'm in good company here. But in any event, in the printed medium, the photographs come through very well, and it's natural when you're reading to look at a photo that describes the scene depicted. Online, that's not always the case. And so therefore, many of our books, people prefer them in print, which is great for us. We do well as a company that way.
So Peggy, I'll get to you in a sec. While we're on the photos, I wanted to talk to Bob a bit about that. You know, you did one of these photo books for the for Captain Tucker and the schooner Coral, right, Bob?
It was half and half. It wasn't an Arcadia. It was a regular history press with 37,000 words and 60 photos.
You said 37,000 words?
Yeah, 37.5, I believe, is what we came in at.
Mm-hmm. So what was your, I mean, what drove you to do that particular topic? I mean, I think, we've talked, you're a longstanding member of the local history guild, and you know, I mean, we've talked a bit about this before, but I think that it's, you know, I think it's a really it's a really narrow kind of a thing that only a specialist like you would really choose to focus on, and then you have the press that'll pick you up.
Right. Well, as usual with these answers, you know, it was, to me, it was a no-brainer, because I started learning about Captain Tucker through his son, who knew my brother, and the more I heard about it, you know, it was, the concept was a family-owned business, but it was a wooden sailing vessel delivering cargo, and two things stuck out in my mind. First is that, and it was at essentially the end of that era of commercial sail. And the first thing was, this is a representative of the end of that era that goes back thousands of years. They've been carrying cargo like that from ancient times. So that was the first thing that attracted me. Second thing was, was that the topic, it was right here in Fairhaven. He was not, and so he was not it. And Mr. Tucker, Donald Tucker, who was my co-author and son of the captain, and he was enthusiastic about the idea that it was the last of those that operated in Fairhaven, and that goes back to the early days of when New Bedford was part of Fairhaven.
So there's a bigger story even than the story up front. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And Michael, I mean, how did it land on your desk?
Well, actually, I didn't work on Bob's on Bob's book, but I did work on Peggy's, and typically it lands on my desk one of two ways. Either an author is out there in the community and has heard of us, or through someone like yourself has, you know, heard of the History Press or Arcadia and wants to kick off a conversation about, hey, I've got an idea for a book, and then I reach out to them and find out a little bit about their background.
Oh.
Or a lot of times I will have an idea for a book based on my own knowledge of New England and my knowledge of what we're publishing in other parts of the country, that I think, hey, maybe a book on that in New England could do well. And then I would go and look for an author, and oftentimes I'll start by contacting an organization such as yours, local historical societies, state historical societies, my author, you know, now my peer-to-peer network in the author world. And there's usually someone who knows a fair amount about that stuff, certainly more than I do. And they're the ones I need to talk to see if we can put something together, and does it make sense for our audience, and, you know, we go on from there.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Peggy's book here. You know, I mean, one of the most impressive things about this book, of course, is that John Mitchell wrote the foreword to it. You know, yeah, that's pretty good, Peggy. You know, you got the imprint, you got the story, and you got the mayor on the title page.
Actually, it was Mike's idea that I asked the mayor to write the preface, and he did.
So so tell me the story. How did this whole thing come to light?
Well, it all came to light because of the Whaling Museum. I was working with Carol Foster on the Merchants Bank project, and we were having lunch one day, and she said, I'm positive this photograph in the library collection is Harriet Jacobs. And as a straight woman, I said, who's Harriet Jacobs? And it went from there. And it turned out, of course, that Harriet Jacobs had this incredible relationship with the Grinnell family. And the Grinnell family is most definitely New Bedford all the way. And so it just kind of exploded from that point.
Well, this is right down your alley, isn't it? I mean, when you're talking, you know, first families of New Bedford, that's Peggi Medeiros country.
I'm fascinated by families.
Yeah.
And New Bedford has some amazing families that no one has ever heard of. Like the Joneses. See, you don't know about the Joneses.
Edward Coffin Jones.
Edward Coffin Jones,
Yes, of course.
who was the second family in the Roach Jones Duff House.
So are you dangling some bait here in front of the editor?
I'm dangling to Mike because I'm dying to write about Edward Coffin Jones and the girls for years.
Okay.
And he was a friend of Lincoln's. He was at Abraham Lincoln's inauguration, and then he was at the reception at the White House the next day. So he definitely was an interesting character.
Well, you know, this Harriet Jacobs story, you know, it really resonates. I mean, the timing for this, you know, here in New Bedford is pretty significant. I mean, you know, with the with the museum and its Lighting the Way program, you know, which is focusing on women, historical women of the South Coast, and the whole issue of the Underground Railroad, which we're going to have an exhibition. You know, Tim Walker's going to be doing an exhibition on that in another year or so, and you know, and we just did a local history guild talk with Tim, you know, on his Sailing to Freedom book, and so you know, so where does Harriet Jacobs fit into this, Peggy?
Harriet fits in because she's so unusual. She is the only Black woman who was enslaved to write an autobiography.
Huh.
She's the only one we have. And interestingly enough, her book, her autobiography was published just as the Civil War broke out and no one read it. But Harriet is very interesting because her family had been in New Bedford. They escaped as slaves and they went back to the South. Harriet was being molested by her owner, and she hid in her grandmother's attic for 7 years and then was able to escape to the North. And it's just an amazing story.
Yeah, that's pretty unbelievable. She hid in an attic for 7 years.
She hid in the attic so that her owner would not find her.
Huh. How did her story come to light?
Her story came to light originally through her autobiography. And she was not rescued, but her freedom was bought by the Grinnell family. And at one point, when a slave catcher came looking in New York, they sent Harriet to New Bedford with one of the babies in the Grinnell family. And the idea was that if Harriet were caught, there would be noise made about this white baby. And so the family would know that Harriet had needed to be rescued.
Yeah. Huh.
At the same point, she did make it here safely, and she stayed at the Grinnell Mansion.
Huh.
And luckily, the Grinnell Mansion is still here.
Well, it sure is up on County Street.
Oh yeah, it's a great gray mansion.
Sort of austere looking place. It's not a very welcoming looking place, is it?
Well, it was at one time. There was a conservatory, and the grounds around it, there was nothing there, so it was beautifully landscaped. And it was the place where Congressman Joseph Grinnell was very well known. And when people like President John Quincy Adams came to New Bedford, he stayed at the Grinnell Mansion. And Abraham Lincoln was at the Grinnell Mansion. When he came, he didn't stay there, but he went to a reception there.
So Michael, are you seeing the same kind of an uptick in titles, Underground Railroad stuff, women's history, these kinds of themes that are that are really dominant, I think, probably over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we have, and certainly we try on a marketing side to channel those interests to the best abilities we can. So, whether it's Women's History Month or Black History Month, we're tying it to an event to make sure that we get the publicity for the title that we need. And yeah, I mean, to your point, absolutely. On the other side, we have events that Peggy and I have talked about, and you and I have talked about, like the virus, that are totally unexpected and impact us as a publisher, but no less so than many other businesses. So we have that to contend with, but we've done well, and very fortunate that we have a pretty loyal readership and some great customers, and through technology, we're able to make things like this happen, and others. So
Here I got a tough question for you. This is a tough one, I think, because the thoughts popping into my head. What's the cutoff date for a historical narrative? I mean, what constitutes history from your point of view?
Well, from my view as a publisher, I mean, we've got books that go back to Native Americans and all the way through 50s, 60s. In terms of market analysis and what people want to read about, I think it depends on the region, but we tend to probably, I would say the divergence is somewhere around the late 1970s, where you can have the proper perspective on a subject. Enough time has passed where you can give the treatment that it deserves without the raw sort of emotion that may be attached to some unpleasant or unforgivable event. There are exceptions, of course, but that's generally about that. And as the press gets older, that date sort of moves up and things become more popular. Initially, our books on World War I were very popular, but as that generation's grandparents have died off, our books on World War II have sort of taken over for that, and then that will lead into something else. And it's a good question, and it probably depends on the topic, and two, the geography and what it is you're talking about. Is it sort of a general history of the town, or is it a particular is it a riot or an event that happened, an earthquake, a fire, something that is in more recent memory? So it really depends on the topic.
Yeah, it's hard to gain perspective. I mean, it's hard to gain perspective when you're so close to something.
Right.
Like say, for instance, the January 6th insurrection event, for instance, that's
right.
That's pretty raw in the American experience at the moment. And when's it, how long is it going to take until that's not raw? How long is it going to take until the Vietnam era is not raw, or Woodstock, Woodstock, there's still people running around that were hanging out at Woodstock. There's not a lot of perspective there. They remember this stuff.
Right. Right.
What do you think, Bob?
The perspective is interesting. In my case, we, actually, my co-author, one of the two, the other was Carrie Tucker, that's married to Donald's son, and also who is the grandson of Captain Tucker. In that case, Donald Tucker actually sailed aboard the Coral as a 5 and a 6-year-old during the summer, during some summer trips. So he was actually on a vessel. He was working on those, not working. He was on board. Yeah. And experiencing those. And we also had several tapes that he had made, audio tapes of his father, available to us. We had an audio tape of Captain Bowker from the schooner Brilliant, who was a veteran of 3 and 4 masters, schooner Brilliant at Mystic. So we had perspective. We had the people right there, but we could hear them speaking. We have I'll just add this, we have an audio tape of Bill Tucker, his son, who was trying to save the coral in the midst of the hurricane of 38.
Wow.
So, so that was a strong point. And so we filled in with as much archival research as possible to, fill the gaps in and verify everything that was said and printed from an audio tape.
What happened to the coral anyway?
The coral it sunk off Goat Island in Newport in the 1938 hurricane. It was raised, brought back to Fairhaven, and at the Pearson-Kilburn shipyard, there are several photographs by Albert Cook Church of the coral under repair, but it was at the end of the Depression, and so as Don Tucker says, it broke the bank, and so it just lay at what is now the northern end of Lindbergh's pier in Fairhaven, and Captain Zeb Tilton of the famous LSS Wentworth, a family friend, arranged to take over the coral in the very early 40s and repair it, but he could only get so far, and then with his eyesight, he could no longer sail, and so it sits under a pier of sorts, landfilled at the northern end of Lindbergh Marine in Fairhaven.
So it's buried in Fairhaven.
Yes.
Wow.
What happened? Pardon?
Was anything from the vessel saved? The quarter boards or main board or anything?
Yes, I think Captain Douglas on the Vineyard has a couple of items. Other people, Mr. Tucker has the compass and binoculars and several, a couple of his original items that were attached when they were loading gasoline on Fish Island.
So, Bob, you mentioned Albert Cook Church. This is another sort of a question for Michael. Would you do a photo book about a photographer?
Yes, we have actually.
Yeah.
There are a few famous. I haven't done them personally, but in our company we have, and there were a few outside of New England. I think it was in New York State. Very well known, landscape photographers and portrait artists that had quite a following and quite a name and quite a history behind them. So yeah, it's you have pictures of pictures, and those pictures have stories too, because the photographer and the business and that industry changed over the years, and so that story has to be told. So it can be interesting.
So where do you see this going? I mean, you're selling hard copy books. You publish, these are very nice books. I mean, and they're $22.
Right.
And they're really very nice. And you say the market is still there for them, but technology, of course, is throwing curveballs left and right. And
Sure.
There's also questions of the viability. I think there's probably legitimate questions of the viability of the book market, as well as competition from other sort of local history presses. Are there other local history presses of?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There certainly are, and we know of them, and we compete with them to a certain degree, and sometimes we cooperate. Or sometimes there's a book that we just can't take because we're a for-profit commercial publisher. We're pretty large. I'm given certain guidelines for, revenue expectations and so forth. And if we don't think it's a good idea, but it probably won't sell very well, I can always refer them out to someone in a smaller print house that, might be able to do something like that. The academic presses have been through some difficult times. There's not as many of those as there used to be. But, we've done well. And I think one of the reasons is our particular format. So the two things that really drive it are, as I said, local history written by local authors. So people like Peggi and Bob, people who know, as I say, where all the bodies are buried on a given subject, right? So they are the people, even if they don't have the information, they know where to get it, and they can put their hands on it. And that's incredibly valuable. And that's why our books do well. The second thing is the format of the books. They typically are under 50,000 words. They're generally under 200 pages. They contain photographs, which is a main component of our book. Photographs typically do not translate well to electronic readers or Kindles or ebooks. And I think you brought this up in an earlier conversation, the question about, hey, isn't ebooks going to do away with print? The short-term answer to that is no, although it will complement it. There are some books that we do sell in ebook format, and they do fine. But generally, what I have found in my own experience with the books we've done is that the ebook format tends to do better in what I would call the fiction and general population books. So, if someone wants the latest Stephen King book or the latest whatever thriller, they can download that at the beach or on vacation. Yeah, and that's a great way to do it. You have something in your lap and you're reading it. The books that we manufacture have photographs in them. They are laid out in such a manner that people will want to handle them. The tactile sensation of having a book, reading it in print, giving it as a gift, either to an older family member, and I call them generational books because here's one that dad or granddad might like because it's where he grew up, right? Or you give it to your grandson or to your daughter and say, hey, this is what your town looked like, 20 years before there were condos there. And they don't know that much about where they're living. So it works both ways, but I think it's a combination of both, and we don't know where it's going. So most of our contracts, in fact, with our authors allow for electronic publishing rights. So whatever that may be, and there's some boilerplate language in there that contemplates the great beyond. Because we don't know where that's going in terms of technology. There could be another format 5 years from now that's terrific and easier to download, and we'll make it available on that too. We try to be a little agnostic in that sense, but the heart of what we still do is print, and we'll do it as long as it's keeps going.
What's your idea about print on demand? I mean, is that?
Well, that's an interesting concept. As a technology, that's actually helped our business a great deal. The concept of just smaller print runs, because the economics of running a press, of running a publishing house, the traditional economies of scale are that the more books you print, the cheaper the per copy cost, right? So that's what in the old days, and I would say 20 years ago is now the old days, would drive a publisher to do a print run of 1,000 initially of a book. And then the per copy cost would be a lot less. The printer would give you a bill, and here's what your copy is per cost. And then you have a marketing surcharge and you have to pay your editors and so forth. So it was all very, very much determined by the print run. And then prior to the advent of on-demand printing, publishing houses were challenged when a book became low on inventory, because then the internal discussion at a publishing house became, how many of these do we need to print? How many of these do we really want to have on hand at any given time? Christmas is coming up, or the holiday season. Do we print 50? Do we print 500? It was all sort of an art, not really a science. Now with on-demand printing, after I know our press, other presses are different. After our initial print run, we have the ability to go to our printer on, an on-demand basis, and there's an algorithm set up, and they can see the orders coming in, and that title has a history. And so if they see the inventory the system sees the inventory getting down to whatever we set the limit at, 50 copies, 10 copies, it can order a print of 50 copies. So we're not into it for expense.
There's no difference in the quality, right?
Yeah, no, the file is the file. And so one of the things that I talk about with the authors is that, their book remains what I call evergreen in the publishing trade, so that there's really it's really done away with the business of having to declare something out of print simply because it's just uneconomical or just too cumbersome to print it again. That still happens on occasion when you get a book that's an odd format or perhaps has colored plates or something. But most of our books are designed to just keep, we have the files, they can be printed on very low cost at a very low volume, and it keeps the author happy because it keeps it in print, and keeps us happy because, they can buy it through Amazon or through us.
So, the people end of this is I find really, really interesting. And we have a question here from Ron Fortier. He says, how does someone begin the process from proposing the title to the writer's contract and on to printing and distribution. And that kind of dovetails with another question that I have that I'll ask a little bit later.
Well, the short answer is there's a, on our website, there's a little link that says, make me an author. And if you click on there, there's a little form you can fill out. You fill out that form, you hit send, it's, it's one page, it's less than a page. And it asks basic information about your name, the idea you have, tell us a little bit about yourself, what style is. And if it's, then it gets split up in the system. And if it happens to be on Connecticut or one of the New England states, I'll end up getting that form. And I'm the one who will contact that person. And I'll analyze it, maybe ask them for more information, or perhaps it'd be something that, somebody else in the company would get and forward to me. So that's how it starts. We certainly have other avenues. We are known to various trade groups and to historical societies. So occasionally we'll simply just get a message from someone, hey, we're having someone give a talk on, you name the topic. The old soda company that used to be here was a bottling company. And this would make a great story because they're one of the last holdouts, right? So would that make an interesting story for your press? And I'd say, sure, put me in touch with the guy or the gal who's going to give that talk. Sounds like a good idea.
So my next set of questions again has to do with this idea of the people's presses. How many people do you employ? I mean, is there an opportunity for college graduates, to become editors or to become graphic designers or people who can lay out these books? Is this done by people, or is it done by
Sure.
a computer, a computer sort of like you just plug and play? Or do people actually like lay these things out?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. It is still a pretty people-intensive, labor-intensive business, but we're pretty good at doing a large number of books per year with not all that many people. So I don't know how many people we are. We do cover the country, but we do have people such as myself. I acquire titles for the history press. So what that means is I find people like Peggi or Bob that want to write for us. Maybe there's a subject they're thinking of, or it's a subject I'm thinking of, or someone writes into the company. So I bring those titles in-house. I get the author under contract. I do a certain amount of review for the getting the images in, the writing, a certain amount of editing. And then we have another round of editing with production editors. And there's a whole team of those people that will then go through it with a fine-tooth comb for things like Chicago Manual of Style, capitalization, punctuation, grammar, spelling, formatting, and placement, page layout designers. We have a graphic team we have a team that just does covers all day long because our covers are terrific.
They are.
You've seen them.
They're great.
But that takes work, and they're very good at what they do. And so we work with them closely. So it's a combination of things. And we have I think there's an HR link on our website to look at careers. If we have openings, we always post them there. So it's a good
Well, it
place.
seems like a great opportunity, I would think, for, there are still people out there who love words and love writing,
Yeah.
and would really love to get into the publishing business. It just seems like, a pretty big press, and you do a lot of work, and you work, like, where are the various facilities around the country?
Well, it's become simplified, and the virus sort of helped determine that, but in an interesting way. So Charleston, South Carolina has been the home of the company since 1997, when it was founded, and that's the main office. But even before the virus hit last year, the year and a half ago, with technology, with remote work capability, we had individuals who weren't necessarily in Charleston and were very good at what they did, and could work from home or work from another facility. So when the company first started in '97, I think they had publishing offices in the major cities. So San Francisco, Chicago, we had an office in New Hampshire, we had an office in Charleston. But that all takes money, and it's these days probably not the most economical way to run a business. So
I see it says right there, made in the USA.
right. So one of the things about our company, so we're still based in Charleston. So one of the advantages to publishing with us, and some people do the self-publishing route, which I'd be happy to talk to anyone about, which is a big item on people's minds these days. Everything we do is done here in the States. So all of our editors they're US-based editors, whether they're in New England or New York or Chicago or LA. We work remotely. Our printer is in Chicago. All the books are printed there, recycled paper. So everything is done here in the US, and the cover, the artwork, the design, graphic, shipping, warehousing, all that is done here. So that makes us a little bit unique.
Yeah, so the inevitable question is right there in the chat. You know, how are authors compensated?
Well, as it's a question I usually address up front with authors, and Peggy and Bob can certainly give me their take on it. But the first thing for a new author that I tell them is that typically, you know, we do have a royalty system. We pay them a royalty. And I always tell them, don't quit your day job, because we want people who are passionate about history, who love what they do, and who would love to write. And that's really the reward. You know, is there some money involved? Yes, you'll get some money for writing a book. It's not a great deal of money. It depends how many you sell. Depends how energetic an author you are in terms of promotion and social media presence and book signings. I mean, you can really do pretty well. But you know, it's not you know, it's not a full-time job for most of our authors. Most of our authors are great in that sense because they have another vocation. And again, it goes back to that word perspective, right? So I have high school history teachers who write for us. They tend to make very good writers, and they know their stuff. We have people who are doctors, educators, you know, you name it, just about everybody. People who've retired, just always wanted to publish a book on something, and they know all about their town. And so just anyone you can think of.
I love this. I think it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, my wife Jenny did a book on Westport for Westport, Mass, for the Images of America.
Yeah.
You know, it was just really kind of neat. She had to go to Portsmouth for some reason. She had to drop stuff off at an office in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Yeah, that back then we had an office there. We had, I think, 6 offices across the country when it was first started. And then they began to close those down as they centralized things in Charleston. And now with technology, people are spread out once again, but the office is still there, and we all, you know, get together for meetings, and we do a lot of this stuff actually.
So Bob and Peggy, I mean, do you guys go out and beat the bushes to sell your books? I mean, how does that work for you?
I think it depends on.
No, go ahead, Becky.
With my first book, I did a lot of book signings and a lot of readings. With Harriet, because it hit in March, just as COVID hit, it wasn't able to do anything until really fall. And then it's all been by Zoom.
So let me ask you this, Peggy. Do you have a program that you would do, a Zoom program?
Oh, sure. I've done it, you know, a number of times for the Dartmouth Arts and Historical Society.
Right. Well, what about a live program?
Yeah, I'd love to do a live program.
What do you have, PowerPoint, or is it just a lecture, or what?
It would probably be, I'd probably put together a PowerPoint for it.
Yeah. Because we should probably, I mean, you know, we should get you, we should absolutely get you in here to do this, you know, do this in person. I mean, this is a really significant topic for the museum at a number of levels. And I know there was some discussion, you know, just last March, you know, there was discussion about getting you in. You know, I had the book, I bought the book, I had the book, I had it here. And I was like, I'm gonna get Peggy to sign it, I'm gonna get her to come in and do a local history guild program. And of course, that all just fell off the rails. But we'll definitely do that. And Bob, didn't you say that you had a new title that you're thinking of?
Well, I'm always thinking of a new, new topic, and it's almost like there are too many topics. It's other factors are coming in right at the moment. But I do want to address the thing about, you know, our book came out in May of 2013, and Donald Tucker and I, and sometimes Carrie Tucker, we did quite a few talks, and promoted the book that way. And it was a time, social media was getting going as far as, and now it's really, I think the secret, or, well, I don't want to say the secret, but it's not a secret. The way to promote your book is the way a lot of other people promote their products. They're connected through Pinterest, or obviously Facebook as a way of getting people to drive them to their talks where they can sell the book. They can create other products, whether it's we made some pretty nice caps for the Schooner Coral. Kind of had a gag, but they're very nice coasters. We had last of the Fairhaven Coasters,
Yeah.
beverage coasters,
Oh,
and they were, but they were high quality. I've got a few here somewhere, but the point is that there are ways of using social media in a focused way to drive them, to a point of sale. And I think that would be a way to increase an author's return on the book.
How do these things wind up in grocery stores and Walgreens and the hardware store, and like these oddball places, where where you see these racks, and it's like,
Yeah.
there it is, man.
Well, I mean, that's a very good question, and it's actually a very big and complicated part of our company, and that's called our national sales division. So there are people in the company that are charged with developing relationships with large retail vendors, such as Walgreens, CVS, Ace Hardware, Target, places like that. And what can we do to get our books into your store? And that's not an easy thing. With the number of products available on any given day. So they work pretty hard at opening up those channels, and some of them have worked out quite well. And I know Walgreens now, and in the New England area anyway, Walgreens and CVS and Ace and True Value Hardware sell quite a few of our books. Right, you see them everywhere, and that's the point. I mean,
So it's not like Bob has to go into the local Walgreens and talk to the manager and say, hey, you want to sell my book?
Well, yeah, it does get complicated because, we do have authors occasionally say, Mike, my book came out last month, but I was in Walgreens. I didn't see it there. And, to be honest with you, it's a big company, right? So, and the process is a lengthy one. So I take that information, I literally send an email to whoever I know in our national department, and I just tell them, look, it's a good author, it's a great book, it should be in this store. See what you can do to make it happen, or is there an answer I can give you? And I try to find out, but sometimes it's out of, it's something they're working on, or Walgreens is a different decision or whatever. But
What's the best-selling book so far in the history of your company? Do you know?
No, I don't. It's probably, it's one of the Arcadia titles, and I'm gonna probably say it's one of the landmark titles. It's probably Ellis Island or Statue of Liberty. It's just so iconic, and it's a tourist-driven place that, it's just phenomenal that we've sold so many of those and continue to sell them because the story doesn't change. People's opinions, views change, but, the story behind how it was and why it was, remains the same, and it's an age-old story. And if you can get something that's authoritative at the right price that has nice pictures for a first-time visitor, it's just magical. The other one is what I'm thinking of the huge, what's the resort in North Carolina? The estate, Biltmore. That's another one that's a huge seller for us, Biltmore Estate. And they have a tremendous, I guess, a gift shop, and they sell a lot of them. And it's a good title for us. Just keeps going.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny that there was one of the Images of America titles was actually, it was from Philadelphia, but it was from the collection of the Library Company of Philadelphia. It was like, wow, that's like one of the oldest libraries in the country, and they're doing a book, for Images of America. This is great. It was priceless. I actually posted it on my Facebook page this afternoon. Look really closely at the bottom of it. It says, Library Company of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Could I just add a comment about a couple of Christmases ago? I was contacted because in Wareham in the Target, they had an entire section of possible, I don't know, maybe 30 history press books. And it was a promotion, for the Christmas season. I believe we sold a few there during that Christmas season. So that, that's one way that, and I think it was someone else it was someone else's project, but that's another way that they're getting, I see them in the stores.
Yeah, I mean, that's, we hope that, and they run trials all the time with new retailers. As you can imagine, it's like, although it's, very personal to us, to a company like that, it's, it's another product. So you have to prove yourself. You have to go through, different things to get it placed and see if it's going to work for them financially. And like I said, we have people dedicated in-house to work on those things. And it's a big part of the business now.
You see this question from Suzanne. Do authors receive royalties on volume discount order?
Well, I'd be happy to talk to them offline if they want to connect with me, but essentially the way that works is twofold. One, authors typically receive a royalty on each sale, and it's by contract. So the terms of the contract spell that out, and it gets into a lot of contractual language I can't go into here, but it's, it's a small percentage. But the bottom line there is, in the alternative, if an author wants to buy a bulk number of copies for them to sell at author signings or the town fair or whatever, they can do that and receive a pretty substantial discount, but they can't get both. In other words, they can't get a royalty on the books they're buying for themselves to sell out. But that's a program that's also worked well for us for a number of authors who just love the speaking engagement type of opportunity, whether it's historical society, the library, preservation groups, and they carry the books around with them and they can autograph them there at the site, and it keeps the product alive and keeps people talking about it, and it keeps it relevant in the community, and it promotes their organization, wherever it is that they're speaking, whether it's the Preservation Society or the Historical Society, and it promotes our book as being sort of a silent partner with them in terms of the history of that community. So it's something that works well. But to answer the question, yeah, there's a way to work it out.
So you attendees, do you have books on your mind? Feel free to add to the chat. We're in the last 10 minutes of the program here. So if you have great aspirations on your mind of a book that you have, we'd love to hear about it. And then I'll put Mike Kinsella directly on the spot. He could just as easily say, "Oh, well, the program's done." So you got that. Go to the website. What about you, Peggy? You got anything else in the works?
My primary focus right now is on the Jones family at the Roach Jones Stuff House.
Right. Good.
I'm hoping I can sell Mike on it. It's fabulous because they were there from 1850s.
Yeah.
And Amelia Jones lived there until 20th century, 1930s.
Okay.
And she was a founder of a children's hospital in Dartmouth. So it's a very interesting family. The first wife was Portuguese or grew up in Portugal, which is a very nice connection for New Bedford.
Right.
And
right.
we have two built-in sales places, the Roach Jones Duff House, which is a National Historic Landmark.
Okay.
It has a wonderful bookstore and the Whaling Museum.
Yeah, those two.
We do. And apparently the last of the Fairhaven Coasters is for sale in our museum store. So we're open. We are open for business. We are open to local History Guild members to come on in and say, I want to buy my book, and I hope that someday I'm going to write one of my own. So folks, thank you all for coming this evening. I think we're going to wrap it up unless anybody has any further questions. You're all happy with the program? You have anything you want to
I'd like to
add?
Say
go ahead,
something
Bob.
if I could. I think I've seen over and over again, in at Christmas time or whatever, and I've seen how people react to the books. They end up, spending, their Christmas reading the book and looking at the photos. So there's the purchaser benefit to the community, and developing interest and esteem in the community. But I also want to mention that, if you're an archivist, I think, and all the people who do all the work down in the archives or whatever, we do a lot of work to preserve all these photographs, make them available, and all the other materials that they keep, and they catalog and all that sort of thing. And I think it's a it's almost like, it could be, I'm not sure how they think, but it's almost like a shot in the arm, because here's the work we've been doing, and finally here we see it in a book in print that people are enjoying and buying. So I just wanted to, these things have effects that aren't obvious to just the person buying the book. So
Great.
Excellent point. Well, I guess we're wrapping up the program.
Thank you so much.
Oh, there it is.
Thank you.
There it is. Last in Fairhaven. Thank you all for coming. This is lots of fun, and I learned a lot, Michael, and I really appreciate your taking the time.
Thanks,
and of course,
Mike. Thanks.
Sure.
Peggi
Mike.
and Bob are just going to keep writing books.
Yeah. Keep
I
coming.
hope you.
All right.
Well, y'all have a nice evening.
Yeah.
All right,
No, it's a
thank
good opportunity.
All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Bye.